Welcome back to Strange Reads. I'm David, and today's story is Turntables of the Night by Terry Pratchett. This is a story requested by Daniel Stewart in the comments of a previous Why Read This episode. Thank you, Daniel. Sir Terry Pratchett said that he tried to write as though he were a 13-year-old with a serious amateurishness. Most famous for his Discworld novels, Ankh-Morpork and Rincewind and all of that, he also wrote quite a few short stories. He said he quite envied authors who loved writing short stories. For him, the process always seemed to cost blood. Sir Terence David John Pratchett was born on the 28th of April 1948 in Beaconsfield, Buckinghamshire, England, UK. To Father David, a mechanic, and his mother Eileen, a secretary. He grew up in the area and attended Hotspur School. In 1957, his family moved to Bridgewater, Somerset, where Pratchett attended John Hampden Grammar School. Terry became an eager member of the debating team and began writing stories for the school magazine. Influenced by H.G. Wells and Arthur Conan Doyle, the school magazine published one of his stories in 1961. Terry was 13 years old. 2 years later, the tale reappeared, renamed as The Hades Business, and commercially published in Science Fantasy. At high school, Pratchett expressed an interest in becoming an astronomer. However, his poor mathematical skills saw an end to this. Instead, he started a career in journalism, working at Buck's Free Press. In this role, he interviewed Peter Bander Van Duren, the director of Collins Smythe Publishing Company. Pratchett mentioned that he had a manuscript, The Carpet People, and by 1971, the company put it into print. Although raised as Church of England, Pratchett described himself as an atheist and was a distinguished supporter of Humanists UK. He married Lynn Purvis at Gerrards Cross on the 5th of October 1968, and in 1970 they moved to Roebury, Somerset and had one daughter, Rihanna, in December of 1976. His role in journalism led to a variety of offers, and he became the press officer for the Central Electricity Generating Board, the experiences from which inspired his first Discworld novel, The Colour of Magic. He left the CEBG in 1987 to become a full-time writer. Throughout the 1990s, he listed many novels on the UK's bestsellers list. By 1996, he was the top-selling, highest-earning UK author. His family moved to Broadchalk in Wiltshire in 1993. In 2007, aged 59, he was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's disease. Pratchett maintained a positive and cheerful disposition, stating, "There's at least a few more books yet." In later years, Pratchett would write by dictating to his assistant, Rob Wilkins. Pratchett donated $1 million to the Alzheimer's Research Trust and campaigned to make Alzheimer's disease awareness more prominent. In 2009, the BBC released a BAFTA Award documentary series, Terry Pratchett, Living with Alzheimer's. He died at home on the 12th of March 2015 from Alzheimer's disease. On his official Twitter account, his assistant Rob Wilkins wrote, "At last, Sir Terry, we must walk together." Terry took Death's arm and followed him through the doors and onto the black desert under the endless night. The end. Pratchett fell in love with these characters and developed them across many novels, and sometimes they popped up in places you might not expect them. And that's what happens in Turntables of the Night. See if you can spot him. John is giving a statement to the police. We learn that his friend Wayne has died, and this is why John is talking to the constable. Wayne is described as a blues single, a scratchy old number re-recorded 100 times from the original by a man named something like Deaf Orange Robinson, standing knee-deep in the Mississippi and moaning through his nose. As John starts to describe his relationship with Wayne, he says he might never drive again for fear of who may show up in the passenger seat. It doesn't mean anything to us at the time. Wayne and John were the owner-operators of Hellfire Disco. John had the van and Wayne had the record collection, and what a collection. The van had been resprayed with the Hellfire Disco logo, but you could still read Midland Electricity Board through it, if you knew where to look. John had wanted the van to be like the A-Teams, but where theirs could jump 4 cars, his had a problem with drain covers. Again, John says he won't be driving ever again. Wayne and John had travelled the country collecting records. His friend had been a connoisseur of everything music, down to knowing the name of the cleaning lady who scrubbed the studio after a band recorded their LP. With the intention of becoming a DJ show, they bought second-hand amps and leads and stuff, and bunged flyers in local news agency windows. Then, they waited. They didn't take off immediately. John states he thinks his sister Beryl's anniversary launched them. Wayne took the partygoers down memory lane. After that, word of mouth took off. Wayne could talk to anybody about music. He loved every record in his collection, and if someone requested something, he probably had it in the van. They loved him. John senses the constable is getting impatient with his rambling and moves along to last night's Halloween fundraiser for the local church hall. He'd let Wayne set up all the gear while he sat down at the bar. John had only had one drink of the punch, and it was all fruit juice. Okay, maybe 2. Everyone wore a mask to the party, but hadn't put so much effort into their outfits. It looked like Frankenstein had shopped at Marks and Sparks. Wayne started with a few hot numbers and quickly started to make mistakes. He even scratched a record. At the first break, John went up and asked what was wrong. He was sweating on the mixer. It's that bloke in the flares. He's been doing John Travolta impersonations all night. Platform soles, silver medallion, skull mask. John hadn't seen him. Oh, and maybe he'd had 3 drinks. But Wayne looked really scared and asked John to stay with him. So John let him go on with the show while neatening up his mess of plugs and adapters, what he described as Wayne's contribution to electrical safety. Halfway through the next number, Wayne hauled his mate onto the stage. There he is. Can you see him? But John could only see a space where people weren't, and it seemed to stay. It moved a bit sometimes, but it was always there. I went and stood in it, said John. It was cold, and it said, "Good evening," although the voice came from all around and apologised for scaring Wayne. The guy looked a little like John Travolta from the waist down, if you buried John Travolta for about 3 months, and he was 7 feet tall, in his platform shoes and flares. His skull mask was real though. It had a string.
"Could you please introduce me to your friend?"
Alright, maybe I'd had 4 cups, but the lady said it only had a little bit of homemade wine in it. John introduced Wayne to the individual.
"I understand you're a collector."
At this, Wayne's eyes lit up. A chance to talk about his lifetime's work?
"I've got Elvis, Hendrix, John Lennon."
Do you have the full Beatles? Wayne asked.
"Not yet."
John had always done Wayne's fighting for him, and he felt like this interaction had gone on long enough. Shifting to punch the intruder in the chest, his fist hit an invisible wall, like treacle. The man took off his mask and said 2 words to John before taking Wayne very gently by the hand. And that was when the power amp exploded. "Out of all my questions," John started, "I don't know why he wore a mask. He looked the same underneath." And what did he say? He said,
"Drive safely."
"I think I'll just walk home."
So Terry Pratchett had a wonderful knack for slipping in humour, sometimes blatantly, sometimes in a way that wouldn't land until your 3rd reading. Often described as an author for people who don't read, Terry described his readers as people who work with computers. I think he's for everyone, and his stories are a gift for people who want to feel the freedom of childhood again.
In 1989, British author Diana Wynne Jones wanted a story for a young adult anthology called Hidden Turnings, so she asked Terry Pratchett for a contribution. He said the title came to him first. Sometimes you just get an idea for the title and you have to write it. The story, later republished in The Flying Sorcerers, an anthology of comic fantasy tales, finally found a home in a blink of the screen. The story is noteworthy for including Pratchett's character Death, whose jurisdiction is usually the Discworld. Death has appeared in every Discworld novel except 2, and he's been the lead character in Mort, Reaper Man, Soul Music, Hogfather, and Thief of Time. His character has developed since The Colour of Magic, in which he presented as malicious, but over several novels he's become the sympathetic and amusing chap which fans love so much. Let's just get to know him quickly. Death has a hollow voice, described as arriving from all around and not via the ears. He has no vocal cords after all. When he does speak, the words are represented in unquoted small caps. He loves cats, has a granddaughter named Susan, and rides a horse named Binky. Not a cruel individual, he never kills anyone. Death sees his role as a pragmatic public service of collection. As in Turntables of the Night, he's not invisible. Most people just refuse to acknowledge him for who he is unless he insists. Under normal circumstances, only those of a magical disposition, children and cats, allow themselves to see him. Death usually only appears in person at the end of the life of someone notable, such as a king or a queen. Other normal people may be visited by Death when he must come to collect souls to keep the momentum of death going. Also, he may visit a character who's in great peril of dying, and that's why Rincewind has seen him on many occasions. When Pratchett died in 2015, Death tweeted from Terry's account,
"At last, Sir Terry, we must walk together."
Thanks again to Daniel for requesting the story. I picked up my copy in a blink of the screen. Since we last spoke, the channel here has flourished, and we'd love to hear more from you in the comments about your favourite authors, your favourite stories, and stories about the authors and stuff that went on in the past. Now would be an excellent time to like and subscribe. There's a man shaped like John Travolta tapping this episode on the shoulder. Discover more speculative fiction tales in one of our other episodes. Don't be a stranger, subscribe and become a stranger. And remember, keep it strange and drive safely.